The German pilot's laughter echoed through the radio static. Red tails? More like red targets. His squadron mates joined in, their mockery broadcast across the European theater. They had no idea they were about to face the most lethal fighter group in American aviation history. What happened next would silence their ridicule forever and rewrite the rules of aerial combat. My name is Lieutenant Colonel James Thunder Wellington, and this is the story of how we made believers out of everyone who ever doubted the Tuskegee Airmen. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The briefing room at Ramitelli Air Base, Italy, felt smaller than usual that morning in March 1944. 43 pairs of eyes fixed on the mission board where Major Robert Hawk Davidson stood, pointer in hand, tracing our route over the Adriatic Sea. The tension was thick enough to cut with a propeller blade. "Gentlemen, today we escort the B-17s to Berlin," Hawk announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was saying. Berlin. The most heavily defended target in all of Europe. The room erupted in murmurs, a mixture of excitement and apprehension rippling through the assembled pilots. I sat in the third row, my leather jacket creaking as I leaned forward. Next to me, Captain William Sunset Jackson whistled low under his breath. Berlin. They're finally letting us prove what we can do. About damn time, muttered Lieutenant Thomas Footwork Hayes from behind us. His nickname came from his days as a college boxer, but up here, his footwork translated into rudder control that made his P-51 Mustang dance through the sky like a prizefighter in the ring. The truth was, we'd been flying combat missions for 8 months, racking up an impressive record of bomber protection. Not a single bomber lost under our escort, a fact that should have earned us respect. Instead, we got transferred to less critical missions, relegated to milk runs while white fighter groups got the glory assignments. Intelligence reports heavy Luftwaffe presence, Hawk continued, tapping the map where red circles marked known enemy fighter bases. Messerschmitt 109s, Focke-Wulf 190s, and possibly some of their new jets. Command estimates 30 to 40 enemy fighters. Lieutenant Samuel Preacher Williams, our squadron chaplain and one hell of a pilot, raised his hand. "Major, what's the official word from command about engagement protocols?" Hawk's jaw tightened. "Stick with the bombers. Don't chase kills. Protect the package at all costs." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "But if Jerry decides to dance, we're authorized to lead." That brought grins around the room. We all knew what that meant. The brass was finally giving us permission to fight, not just defend. "There's something else you need to know," Hawk said, his expression darkening. "We intercepted German radio chatter yesterday. They know we're escorting this mission. They're calling us Roosevelt's folly and the experiment." He let that sink in before continuing. One pilot, a Major Friedrich Adler from JG-27, apparently told his squadron that shooting down red tails would be easier than target practice. The room went silent. Then Lieutenant Hayes stood up, his chair scraping against the concrete floor. "Permission to make Major Adler eat those words, sir?" "Permission granted," Hawk replied. "To all of you. Today, we show them exactly what the Tuskegee Airmen can do." I felt something shift in that moment. Every man in that room had faced discrimination, had been told we weren't smart enough, brave enough, capable enough to fly combat aircraft. We'd proven ourselves at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, where we'd trained on outdated equipment while white cadets got the newest planes. We'd proven ourselves in North Africa and Sicily, where we'd flown ground attack missions with distinction. But Berlin, this was different. This was the heart of the Reich, the most dangerous sky in the world, and we were about to show everyone what we were truly made of. "Pilots, man your aircraft," Hawk ordered. "Wheels up in 30 minutes. And gentlemen," he looked at each of us in turn, "come home safe. All of you." We filed out into the Italian morning, where our P-51 Mustangs waited on the tarmac, their distinctive red tails gleaming in the Mediterranean sun. The ground crews had painted each tail assembly bright red for easy identification, a marking that had initially been meant to distinguish us from other fighter groups but had become our badge of honor. My Mustang, christened Alabama Thunder, bore 23 small German crosses below the cockpit, one for each confirmed kill. Today, I intended to add to that count while protecting every single bomber in our formation. As I climbed into the cockpit, my crew chief, Sergeant Raymond Cooper, leaned in close. "Colonel Wellington, sir, I double-checked everything. She's running perfect. You bring her back in one piece, and bring yourself back too. Count on it, Cooper." I settled into the familiar seat, the smell of oil and aviation fuel filling my nostrils. Around me, 42 other Mustangs were coming to life, their Rolls-Royce Merlin engines creating a symphony of power that shook the earth. Little did we know that within 3 hours, we'd be in the fight of our lives, facing a German squadron led by the very pilot who'd mocked us, and that the sky over Germany would run red with more than just the paint on our tails. The formation climbed through scattered clouds at 0742 hours, 43 red-tailed Mustangs arranging themselves into combat spread formation. Below us, the Italian countryside gave way to the Adriatic Sea, its waters gray and choppy in the morning light. Ahead, barely visible on the horizon, the massive formation of B-17 flying fortresses lumbered toward their rendezvous point. "Red leader to all red tails, maintain altitude at 22,000 feet, Major Davidson's voice crackled through my headset. "Bomber stream at 10 o'clock, 5 miles out." I adjusted my oxygen mask and scanned the sky, a habit drilled into us during training. In aerial combat, the pilot who sees the enemy first usually lives. The pilot who doesn't becomes a statistic. "Thunder, you seeing what I'm seeing?" Sunset Jackson's voice came through the radio. His Mustang, painted with the name Georgia Peach, flew 200 yards off my right wing. I looked where he indicated and felt my breath catch. The B-17 formation was enormous, over 70 heavy bombers, each carrying a crew of 10 men and enough explosives to level city blocks. They were counting on us to get them there and back. "Affirmative, Sunset. That's a lot of lives depending on us today. Then let's make sure they all make it home." We reached the rendezvous point at 0758 hours, sliding into escort position above and around the bomber formation. The B-17s maintained their tight box formation, each group stacked at slightly different altitudes to maximize defensive fire. Even from my position, I could see the waist gunners and tail gunners scanning for threats. "Red tails, this is Fortress Lead," a new voice joined the radio frequency. "Damn glad to see you boys. We've been hearing things about you." "Good things, I hope," Major Davidson responded. "The best. Word is you haven't lost a bomber yet. We're planning to keep that streak alive. That's the idea, Fortress Lead. Just fly straight, we'll handle any visitors." The next hour passed in relative calm as we crossed into Austrian airspace. The bombers droned steadily northward while we weaved back and forth above them, maintaining altitude advantage and watching for threats. My eyes constantly swept the sky, above, below, ahead, behind, looking for the telltale glint of sunlight on canopies that would betray enemy fighters. At 0913 hours, everything changed. "Bandits. 11 o'clock high, coming out of the sun." Lieutenant Hayes's voice cut through the radio chatter. "Count 20 plus, looks like 109s. My heart rate jumped, but my hands stayed steady on the controls. This was what we'd trained for. I squinted against the sun and spotted them, a formation of Messerschmitt Bf-109s diving toward the bomber stream, their angular shapes growing larger by the second. "Red tails, this is Red Leader. Flight 1, take the high group. Flight 2, middle. Flight 3, low. Do not, I repeat, do not leave the bombers unprotected." Major Davidson's orders were crisp and clear. I was leading Flight 2. "Thunder Flight, on me. We're going to meet them head-on." I pushed the throttle forward, feeling Alabama thunder surge with power. The Rolls-Royce Merlin engine howled as I pointed the nose toward the approaching enemy fighters. Behind me, my flight of 8 Mustangs matched my acceleration. The German fighters opened fire first, tracers arcing through the sky like deadly fireworks. I waited, counting seconds, watching the range close. At 600 yards, I squeezed the trigger. The 6.50 caliber machine guns in my wings erupted, their combined fire creating a stream of lead that reached out toward the enemy. The lead 109 broke left, but he was too slow. My tracers walked across his fuselage, and I saw pieces of metal tear away. Smoke began streaming from his engine. He rolled inverted and dove away, trailing fire. Splash 1. Sunset called out. Thunder's got first blood. But there was no time to celebrate. The sky had erupted into chaos. Fighters twisted and turned in violent three-dimensional combat. Tracers crisscrossed in every direction. The radio filled with urgent calls, warnings, confirmations, desperate pleas for help. A 109 flashed past my canopy, so close I could see the pilot's face. I yanked the stick hard right, pulling 5 GS, my vision narrowing to a tunnel as blood drained from my head. The G-suit squeezed my legs and abdomen, keeping me conscious. Brake left, footwork. 2 under 6. That was Preacher Williams, always watching his wingman's back. I spotted Lieutenant Hayes's Mustang with 2 109s closing in. They had him dead to rights. Without thinking, I rolled inverted and pulled through, coming up behind the trailing German fighter. My finger found the trigger and my gun spoke again. The 109 exploded in a ball of orange flame. "Thanks, Thunder," Hayes called. "Returning the favor." The dogfight raged for what felt like hours but was probably only 8 minutes. The German pilots were skilled and aggressive, but we had several advantages. Our Mustangs were faster, especially at altitude. We had better radios, allowing coordination that the Germans couldn't match. And most importantly, we had something to prove. Then I heard it, the voice that made my blood run cold. "So, these are the famous red tails?" The transmission came through on our frequency, spoken in accented but perfect English. "I am Major Friedrich Adler. Your little flying club is about to end. My squadron will show you what real pilots look like." I scanned the sky frantically, looking for the source of that arrogant voice. Then I saw them, 12 more fighters, these bearing the distinctive yellow noses of JG-27, diving from 30,000 feet. They had altitude advantage, speed advantage, and the element of surprise. "Red leader, this is Thunder. We've got problems. Fresh bandits, 12 o'clock high, yellow noses." "I see them," Major Davidson replied, and I could hear the tension in his voice. "All flights, this is it. Hold your positions. Protect those bombers. Whatever it takes." Major Adler's voice came through again, dripping with contempt. "Roosevelt's experiment dies today. Let me show you how the Luftwaffe deals with amateurs." His fighter, marked with a distinctive black and white checkered pattern on its nose, came screaming down in a near-vertical dive, heading straight for the lead bomber. He was going to make his point by killing the formation leader. Not on my watch. I threw Alabama Thunder into a climb that made my airframe groan, pushing the Mustang to its limits. The altimeter unwound as I climbed, 23,000, 24,000, 25,000 feet. My vision started to narrow from the sustained G-forces, but I kept pulling. Adler was committed to his dive, focused on the bomber. He never saw me coming from below. At 400 yards, I opened fire. The .50 caliber rounds tracked toward his fighter, but he was moving too fast. Only a few hits connected before he flashed past. But it was enough to make him break off his attack, pulling up sharply to avoid my fire. "You're fast, Red Tail," Adler's voice came through, now with a note of respect mixed with anger. "But speed won't save you." "Then let's see what will," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my pounding heart. What happened next would become legendary in the annals of aerial combat. Adler and I merged into a turning fight, each trying to get behind the other, each trying to line up that killing shot. We were two predators circling each other, and only one would walk away. The fight between Major Adler and me became a deadly ballet at 23,000 feet. He turned right, I followed, pulling harder to cut inside his circle. My wings shuddered at the edge of a high-speed stall. He reversed left, rolling his 109 with practiced precision. I matched him, my Mustang's longer wingspan making the roll slower, but I managed to maintain position. "You're better than I expected, American," Adler's voice crackled through the radio. "But the 109 turns tighter than your pig of a Mustang." He was right, the Messerschmitt had better instantaneous turn rate. But he'd made a tactical mistake by staying in a turning fight. The Mustang had better sustained turn performance and more engine power. I kept the pressure on, bleeding his energy with each reversal. My airspeed indicator showed 280 knots, dropping slowly. His would be dropping faster. "Thunder, you've got 2 more bandits climbing to help their boss." Sunset's warning came through clearly despite the chaos of the larger battle around us. "I'm engaging, but you need to finish this fast." I couldn't afford to look away from Adler's checker-nose 109. In a knife fight like this, the first pilot to lose sight was the first pilot to die. My thumb hovered over the gun trigger, waiting for that moment when he'd be in my sights. Adler pulled up sharply, trying to force me to overshoot. But I'd seen that move before, we'd practiced it countless times at Tuskegee against instructors who knew every trick in the book. I pulled up with him, accepting the speed loss, then kicked in hard right rudder and rolled right instead of following his climb. For one critical second, his aircraft appeared in my gun sight, a perfect deflection shot at 300 yards. I squeezed the trigger. Alabama Thunder shuddered as all 6 guns fired in one continuous burst. I could see my tracers tracking toward his fighter, watched them converge on his engine cowling in cockpit. The effect was immediate and devastating. Smoke erupted from his engine. His canopy shattered. The 109 snap rolled left, out of control. "That's for every pilot you've mocked," I said quietly. But Adler wasn't finished. Even with his engine smoking and his canopy gone, he managed to level the aircraft and point it toward the bomber formation. He was going to ram. "Not today," I growled, pushing the throttle to the firewall. Alabama Thunder surged forward, and I positioned myself between the crippled 109 and the bombers. If he wanted to hit anything, he'd have to go through me first. For a long moment, Adler's smoking fighter continued on its collision course. I could see him in the cockpit, his face visible now without the canopy, determination etched in every line. Then, finally, he rolled inverted and dropped away, trailing fire and smoke as he began the long fall to earth. I never saw him bail out. "Thunder, nice shooting." Sunset pulled up alongside me, his Georgia Peach showing bullet holes in the wing but still flying strong. "Fortress Lead is calling for us. We've got a problem." The radio crackled to life. "Red Tails, this is Fortress Lead. We've got cripples falling out of formation, engines on fire. They're sitting ducks for any fighters that got past you." I looked down and saw what he meant. 3 B-17s had dropped below the main formation, trailing smoke. One had 2 engines feathered. Another showed visible structural damage to its tail section. They were limping home, but they'd never make it without protection. "Red Leader, this is Thunder. Permission to take my flight down to cover the stragglers?" There was a pause. Then Major Davidson's voice came back, tight with concern. "Negative, Thunder. We're still engaged up here. We need every fighter." I watched one of the damaged bombers lose more altitude, black smoke pouring from its number 3 engine. I could see crew members in the waist positions, probably treating wounded. Those men needed help. "Red Leader, those bombers won't survive 10 minutes without escort. My flight can cover them while you finish up here." Another pause, longer this time. Above us, the dogfight continued, Mustangs and Messerschmitts weaving through the sky in deadly combat. Major Davidson was weighing the tactical situation: leave the main formation slightly less protected, or abandon 3 bombers and 30 crew members to certain death. "Permission granted, Thunder. But stay with them all the way home. Don't leave them until they're over friendly territory." "Roger that. Thunder flight, on me. We're going down." 7 Mustangs followed me into a steep dive toward the struggling bombers. As we descended, I could see the extent of their damage more clearly. The lead bomber, nicknamed Lucky Lucy according to the nose art, had taken flak that had shredded its right wing. The second bomber, Memphis Belle II, was leaving a trail of smoke so thick it looked like a marker pointing directly to their position. The third, Shandy Irish, seemed the most intact but was clearly struggling to maintain altitude. Thunder Flight, spread out. 2 ship elements. Cover all vectors. Any bandit comes near these guys, you splash him. Understood? A chorus of acknowledgments came back. We were at 15,000 feet when I spotted them, 4 more Messerschmitt 109s, fresh fighters that had probably been held in reserve, now circling like sharks around wounded prey. Bandits, 3 o'clock level. They've spotted the bombers. Here they come. The German fighters dove toward the crippled B-17s, sensing easy kills. But they hadn't counted on us. Thunder Flight, engage. Don't let them through. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I selected the lead German fighter and pushed my throttle forward, closing the distance rapidly. The 109 pilot saw me coming and broke hard left, but he'd committed to his attack run too early. I had both altitude and speed advantage. Sunset, take the trailer. Footwork, you've got the high one. Preacher, cover R6. My flight split into coordinated pairs, each engaging a different threat. The sky became a swirling melee of aircraft, but this time we held every advantage. We were fresh, they were surprised, and we were fighting to protect brothers in arms. The German pilot I was chasing tried every evasion tactic in the book. He reversed, he climbed, he dove, but Alabama Thunder stayed glued to his 6 o'clock position. At 200 yards, I opened fire. My tracers converged on his tail section, chewing through metal and control surfaces. His rudder disintegrated. The 109 began a violent yaw to the right that he couldn't correct. He rolled inverted and dropped away, trailing pieces of aircraft as he fell. Splash 2. I called, immediately scanning for the next threat. Sunset had his target smoking and breaking away. Footwork and his wingman had boxed in the third 109, taking turns firing until it too began trailing fire. The fourth German pilot, seeing his entire flight destroyed in under 3 minutes, wisely decided to disengage, his 109 disappearing into a cloud bank at full throttle. Thunder Flight, reform on the bombers. Check your fuel and ammo. As we took up positions around the 3 struggling B-17s, I glanced at my instrument panel. Fuel was at 60%, plenty to make it back to base. Ammunition counter showed I'd expended about 40% of my rounds. The mission was far from over, but we were in good shape. Lucky Lucy to Red Tail Escort, a weary voice came through the radio. That was some of the finest flying I've ever seen. You boys just saved our bacon. Just doing our job, Lucy. How bad are you hurt? We've got 2 engines out, hydraulics are shot to hell, and my bombardier took shrapnel in the leg. But we're still flying, thanks to you. I looked over at the damaged bomber, now flying just a few hundred yards to my left. Through the shattered plexiglass of the nose, I could see the bombardier being tended to by another crew member. The pilot gave me a thumbs up from his cockpit. Memphis Belle II here, another voice joined in. We're losing altitude slowly but steady. Not sure we'll make it over the Alps. That was a problem. The Alps stood between us and Italy, and a damaged bomber that couldn't maintain altitude would never clear those peaks. Belle, what's your best altitude? We can hold 10,000 feet, maybe 9,000 if we're lucky. I pulled out my navigation chart, calculating quickly. The lowest pass through the Alps on our return route was at 11,000 feet. They'd never make it. Belle, I'm going to give you a new heading. There's a pass further east, lower elevation. It'll add 30 minutes to your flight time, but you can make it through at 9,000. Roger that, Red Tail. We're in your hands. For the next hour, we shepherded those 3 damaged bombers across Austria and toward the Alps. Every few minutes, I'd check in with each bomber, getting status updates, offering encouragement, calculating fuel burn and distance remaining. The main bomber formation had long since passed us, heading home with their own red-tail escort. We were alone now, 7 fighters and 3 crippled bombers, limping through hostile territory where German fighters could appear at any moment. Thunder, this is Preacher. I'm picking up radio chatter. Sounds like Germans vectoring fighters to intercept us. My jaw tightened. Of course they were. 3 damaged bombers were too tempting a target to ignore. How many and when? Can't tell exactly, but it sounds like at least 6, maybe more. ETA 15 minutes. I looked at my fuel gauge again. We had enough to make it home, but not enough for an extended fight. I did the mental calculation, 15 minutes put us about halfway across the Alps. If we could hold them off for 10 minutes, we'd be over friendly territory and the bombers would be safe. All Thunder flight, we've got bandits inbound in 15. Check your ammo. We're going to have to make every shot count this time. Lieutenant Hayes's voice came back, steady despite the odds. Thunder, we're down to maybe 30% ammunition across the flight. Some of us less. 30%. Against 6 or more fresh German fighters. The math wasn't in our favor. Then we'll have to be smart about this. When they show up, we can't let them get past us to the bombers. No matter what. The Alps rose ahead of us, magnificent and terrible in their beauty. Snow-covered peaks reached toward the sky, and I could see the pass I'd directed Memphis Belle II toward, a narrow cut between 2 massive mountains. Bandits. 10 o'clock high, 6, no, 8 contacts. That was Lieutenant William Dancer Patterson, whose sharp eyes had spotted them first. I looked up and felt my stomach drop. 8 Focke-Wulf 190s, some of Germany's best fighters, diving toward us from altitude advantage. And these weren't regular pilots, the precise formation and aggressive tactics marked them as veterans. Thunder flight, this is it. Pairs stay together. Do not, I repeat, do not let them through to the bombers. If your ammo runs dry, ram them if you have to. I meant every word. Those bombers held 30 men who were counting on us. We'd promised to get them home, and Red Tails never broke their promises. Roger that, Thunder, Sunset replied. Whatever it takes. The Focke-Wulfs came in fast and hard, their radial engines giving them brutal speed in the dive. I picked the lead fighter and turned toward him, accepting a head-on pass that would give him a shot at me but keep him away from the bombers. We opened fire simultaneously at 600 yards. Tracers filled the space between our aircraft. I felt impacts, his rounds hitting Alabama Thunder, but I kept firing, kept my aim steady, kept my aircraft pointed directly at him. At the last possible second, he broke. I didn't. My rounds tore through his cockpit and engine. The Focke-Wulf snap-rolled right, smoke pouring from multiple hits, and dropped away. But I'd taken damage too. My number 2 engine temperature was climbing, and I could feel sluggish response in my ailerons. Some of his rounds had hit something important. Thunder's hit but still flying, I reported, keeping my voice calm. Continue the fight. Around me, the sky erupted into the most desperate combat of my life. 7 damaged Mustangs against 7 remaining Focke-Wulfs, fighting to protect 3 crippled bombers, all of us running low on ammunition, all of us far from home. Lieutenant Hayes went into a scissors maneuver with a Focke-Wulf, each trying to force the other to overshoot. Preacher Williams and his wingmen fought off 2 Germans attempting to dive on Shanty Irish. Sunset's Georgia Peach took hits but kept flying, kept fighting. I checked my ammunition counter. 15% remaining. Maybe 3 good bursts left. A Focke-Wulf broke through our defensive line and headed straight for Lucky Lucy. The B-17's gunners opened fire, but their fields of fire were limited due to their damage. The German pilot lined up for a killing shot on the bomber's cockpit. I dove after him, my engine screaming in protest, coolant temperature now in the red zone. At 300 yards, I triggered my guns. The brief burst caught his tail section, not enough to destroy him but enough to make him break off his attack. He reversed hard, coming straight at me now, angry and aggressive. We flew at each other, closing at a combined speed of over 600 miles per hour. Both of us fired our remaining ammunition in one continuous stream. I felt impacts all over Alabama Thunder. The windscreen shattered. Something hot grazed my left arm. The engine began making ominous sounds. But I kept firing until my guns went silent, ammunition exhausted. The Focke-Wulf flashed past me so close I could see the pilot's face twisted in concentration. Smoke poured from his engine, but he was still flying. So was I, barely. "Thunder, you're on fire." Sunset's voice carried genuine fear. Get out now." I looked back and saw flames licking from my engine cowling. My controls were barely responding. Coolant temperature was off the scale. Every gauge that could show red was showing red. But we were at the mouth of the pass. The bombers were starting through, and the remaining German fighters were reforming for another attack. If I bailed out now, my flight would be down to 6 fighters against 5 Germans. Those weren't impossible odds, but they weren't good ones either. Negative, Sunset. I'm staying with the package. My left engine seized with a grinding shriek of torture metal. The propeller stopped, and I immediately lost speed. The fire was getting worse, and I could feel heat through the cockpit floor. Alabama Thunder was dying, but she had a few more minutes of flight left in her. All Thunder flight, the bombers are almost through the pass. Hold them for just 2 more minutes. 2 minutes. It might as well have been 2 hours. The remaining German fighters came at us with everything they had. They knew we were wounded, knew we were low on ammunition, knew this was their chance to claim the bombers and take down the famous Red Tails in one devastating attack. But they didn't know who they were fighting. Sunset positioned his Georgia Peach directly in front of Lucky Lucy, making himself an impossible-to-ignore target. When a Focke-Wulf dove at the bomber, Sunset turned into him, firing his last ammunition in one long burst that forced the German to break off his attack run. "Winchester!" Sunset called out, using the code word for out of ammunition. "I'm dry, but I'm staying in the fight." Lieutenant Hayes was in similar shape, his guns silent but his Mustang still flying aggressive intercepts, using his aircraft itself as a weapon to force German pilots to choose between their attack runs and collision. Preacher Williams still had ammunition, maybe 10%, and he used it with surgical precision. Every burst counted, every round placed with deliberate care. He splashed one more Focke-Wulf that got too focused on a bomber and forgot to check his 6. My own Mustang was hanging together through sheer will and prayer. The fire had consumed most of my left engine but hadn't spread to the fuel tanks yet. My right engine was still producing power, though it was running rough and losing oil pressure. The Alps were passing below us now, their deadly peaks falling away as we descended toward the Italian side. "Thunder flight, the bombers are through the pass." Lieutenant Patterson called out. "They're going to make it." The German fighters must have realized it too, because their attacks became desperate, almost suicidal. They weren't trying to survive anymore, they were trying to take at least one bomber down before we reached friendly territory. A Focke-Wulf pilot made a kamikaze run at Memphis Belle II, clearly planning to ram the bomber rather than let it escape. Lieutenant Hayes, already out of ammunition and low on fuel, did the only thing he could: he rammed the German fighter first. "Footwork, no!" I shouted, but it was too late. Hayes's Mustang struck the Focke-Wulf's tail section, his propeller chewing through the German fighter's control surfaces. Both aircraft broke apart in a shower of metal. I watched in horror as Hayes's cockpit section tumbled away from the wreckage, the canopy blown clear. "I'm out." "Chute deployed." Hayes's voice came through, strained but alive. "Get those bombers home, Thunder." His parachute blossomed white against the dark mountains below. The German pilot's chute appeared a few seconds later. Both men would be captured, but they'd live. Hayes had saved Memphis Belle II and its crew of 10 men with his sacrifice. "Copy that, Footwork. You're a hero. We'll come back for you." The remaining German fighters, seeing one of their own brought down by pure courage and another red tail willing to die to complete his mission, finally broke off. They'd lost 5 fighters to our defensive action and gained nothing. It wasn't worth losing the rest of their squadron. Bandits are breaking off. Dancer Patterson confirmed. They're heading back to base. A cheer went up over the radio from the bomber crews. We'd done it. Against impossible odds, we'd protected them all. Lucky Lucy to Thunder Flight. I don't know how to thank you boys. You saved our lives. Memphis Belle 2 confirms. You red tails are the real deal. Shandy Irish here. When we get back to base, first round is on us. Hell, every round is on us. But I couldn't join the celebration yet. Alabama Thunder was dying. The fire had finally spread to the wing fuel tank, and I could feel the aircraft losing structural integrity. The stick was barely responding, and I was losing altitude despite full throttle on my remaining engine. Thunder, you need to bail out now. Sunset pulled alongside, close enough that I could see the concern on his face through his cockpit. That fire's going to cook off your fuel any second. He was right. I could feel the heat intensifying, could smell fuel vapor mixing with smoke. But I looked at my altimeter, 8,000 feet, and at the terrain below. We were over the Italian Alps still, but I could see the Pavali in the distance, friendly territory with flat farmland perfect for emergency landings. Not yet, Sunset. I'm going to try to make it to the valley. Give me cover in case any Germans get curious. You're crazy, Thunder. But I'm with you. The remaining 5 Mustangs of Thunder Flight formed up around me, shepherding me home just as we'd shepherded the bombers. The 3 B-17s were ahead of us now, gaining distance as my crippled fighter continued losing altitude. 7,000 feet. 6,000. 5,000. The fire was fully engulfing the left wing now. I could see metal skin peeling away, rivets popping from the heat. The structural failure was imminent. 4,000 feet. 3,000. Come on, girl, I spoke to Alabama Thunder like she was alive, and in a way she was. Just a little further. Just get me over that ridgeline. The final mountain pass appeared ahead, a notch in the hills that led to the Pavali beyond. I could see green farmland, small villages, the promise of survival. 2,000 feet. The left wing began folding upward, the fire having weakened the main spar. When it went, the Mustang would flip over and dive straight into the mountain. I had maybe 30 seconds. The ridgeline passed beneath me. The valley opened up ahead, beautiful and flat and perfect. 1,000 feet. Bail out, bail out, bail out. Multiple voices shouted at once. I grabbed the canopy release and yanked. The plexiglass flew away. I disconnected my oxygen mask, released my harness, and pulled myself up against the slipstream. The heat from the fire washed over me. Alabama Thunder shuddered violently. The left wing folded completely, and the aircraft snapped into an uncontrollable roll. I jumped. The slipstream caught me, tumbling me like a leaf in a hurricane. Sky, ground, spinning wildly. I pulled my ripcord and felt the parachute deploy with a bone-jarring jolt. Suddenly, everything was quiet. I was floating, drifting down toward an Italian vineyard, watching Alabama Thunder's final moments. The Mustang, my faithful companion through dozens of missions, hit the ground in a field just beyond the village. The explosion sent a fireball 200 feet into the air. I landed hard in the vineyard, rolled, and came up unhurt except for bruises and the burn on my left arm from earlier. Italian farmers were already running toward me, and I could see they were friendly from their smiles and waves. Above me, 5 red-tailed Mustangs circled, waggling their wings in salute. Then they formed up and headed toward Ramitelli, escorting the 3 bombers home. I'd survived. We'd all survived, except for Hayes, who was now a prisoner but alive. We'd protected every single bomber. We'd proven that the Red Tails were the finest fighter escort in the European theater. And somewhere in Germany, the pilots who'd mocked us were learning that underestimating men based on their skin color was a fatal mistake. The Italian partisans who found me were members of the resistance, and within 2 hours, they had me hidden in a farmhouse cellar with hot food and medical attention for my burns. Through broken English and hand gestures, they told me American forces were only 20 miles south, and they'd have me back to my unit by morning. That night, lying on a cot in that cellar while above me the Italian family kept watch, I had time to process everything that had happened. We'd faced mockery, faced impossible odds, faced skilled enemy pilots who'd underestimated us because of the color of our skin. And we'd won. Not just survived, won decisively. The next morning, true to their word, the partisans smuggled me through German lines to an American checkpoint. The GIs manning the position stared in disbelief when they saw my red tail squadron patch. "You're one of those Tuskegee pilots," a young sergeant exclaimed. "We heard about yesterday's mission on the radio. They're calling it the greatest escort mission of the war. You guys didn't lose a single bomber, shot down 16 German fighters, and brought back damaged birds that everyone thought were lost. 16 confirmed kills. I'd known we'd done well, but hearing the official count made it real. They drove me back to Ramitelli Air Base in a jeep, and I arrived just as the evening briefing was ending. When I walked into the operations room, dirty and bandaged but alive, the entire squadron erupted in cheers. Major Davidson grabbed me in a bear hug that made my ribs protest. "Thunder! We thought you were dead or captured. The bomber crews have been telling everyone who'll listen about what you did up there." "What about Hayes?" I asked immediately. "Any word?" "Radio intercept confirms he was captured by Wehrmacht forces, not SS. He's alive and being transferred to a POW camp. We'll get him back when this war ends." That was the best news I could have hoped for. Footwork would survive to fly again. "The brass wants to see you tomorrow," Major Davidson continued. "All of Thunder Flight is getting decorated. Distinguished Flying Cross minimum, maybe more. And General Eisenhower himself sent a commendation. Listen to this." He picked up a paper from his desk and read, "The actions of the 332nd Fighter Group on March 24, 1944, represent the finest traditions of American military aviation. Their valor, skill, and unwavering dedication to duty saved the lives of 30 American airmen and proved beyond any doubt that courage knows no color. They are a credit to their service and their nation." The room fell silent. Then Sunset spoke up, his voice thick with emotion. "We've been trying to prove that since Tuskegee. Since before that. Since always." "Well, now the whole world knows," Major Davidson replied. "The stories in every newspaper back home. Radio broadcasts are calling you heroes. Even the white fighter groups are acknowledging what you accomplished. Everything changes from here." He was right. That single mission would reshape how the Red Tails were perceived and employed for the rest of the war. But in that moment, all I could think about was the men I'd flown with, the bombers we'd saved, and Hayes sacrificing himself to protect strangers who needed him. That night, the officers' club at Ramitelli was packed. Bomber crews had flown in from other bases to meet us, to shake our hands, to buy us drinks. The pilots and crews of Lucky Lucy, Memphis Belle II, and Shandy Irish were there, and each man personally thanked every Red Tail pilot they could find. The pilot of Lucky Lucy, a captain from Texas named Daniel Richardson, pulled me aside. "Colonel Wellington, I need you to know something. Before yesterday, I had doubts. I'm ashamed to say it, but I did. When I heard we were getting Red Tail Escort, I wondered if you boys were really up to the task." He paused, tears in his eyes. "You saved my life. You saved my entire crew. You did it knowing some of us had doubted you, and you did it anyway. I'll never forget that. And I'll never let anyone question the Tuskegee Airmen again. Not in my presence." That conversation repeated itself dozens of times that night. Bomber crews who'd been skeptical had become our most ardent supporters. They'd seen what we could do under pressure, and they'd never doubt again. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Near midnight, Major Davidson called for attention. "Gentlemen, I have an update. Our intelligence has been monitoring German radio traffic. Apparently, there was quite a discussion among Luftwaffe command about yesterday's engagement." He paused for effect. "Major Friedrich Adler, the pilot who mocked us over the radio before the fight? He survived. His fighter crashed, but he walked away. And according to intercepts, he's been telling anyone who'll listen that the Red Tails are the most dangerous fighter group in the theater. He specifically said, and I quote, 'These are not amateurs. These are elite pilots who fight with precision, courage, and honor. Any German pilot who underestimates them will die.'" The room erupted in cheers and applause. The man who'd called us Roosevelt's experiment had become our biggest admirer in the enemy camp. Over the following weeks, Thunder Flight continued flying missions. Our reputation spread throughout the Allied air forces. Bomber crews specifically requested Red Tail Escort. German pilots learned to avoid us when possible. We flew Escort to Berlin, to Munich, to oil refineries deep in occupied territory. And true to our reputation, we never lost a single bomber under our protection. Not one. By war's end, the 332nd Fighter Group had flown over 1,500 missions, destroyed 112 enemy aircraft in the air, and earned 96 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 14 Bronze Stars, and countless other decorations. We'd proven that excellence had nothing to do with race and everything to do with training, determination, and courage. Lieutenant Hayes was liberated from his POW camp in April 1945 and returned to the squadron in time for the final missions of the war. He walked into the ready room with his characteristic boxer's confidence, looked around at all of us, and said, "Did I miss anything important? We retired Alabama Thunder's number. No one else would ever fly a Mustang with that designation. Her final mission, bringing me home despite catastrophic damage, had earned her a place in squadron legend." The mockery had turned to respect. The ridicule had become reverence. The experiment had proven to be the finest fighter escort group in American military history. And every time a new pilot joined the 332nd Fighter Group, we told them about March 24, 1944, the day we silenced the doubters forever and showed the world what the Red Tails could really do. The Red Tails achieved over 100 victories in the skies over Europe, but our greatest victory was changing hearts and minds, proving that the only limit on human potential is prejudice itself. And that lesson, hard won in the dangerous skies of World War II, continues echoing through history, inspiring everyone who faces doubt to respond with excellence, everyone who faces mockery to respond with achievement, and everyone who faces discrimination to respond by proving that greatness belongs to those brave enough to claim it. The German pilots ridiculed us. They called us amateurs, experiments, targets. Then we showed them what the Tuskegee Airmen could really do. And the world would never be the same. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.